All right, well, welcome back. We suckered you into a second podcast, so we're kind of excited about that.
A second part.
So we started, if you've listened to the first, I'm assuming people have listened to the first, we started a conversation about change. And we struggle to change. Even those of us who would consider ourselves to be, healthy mentally, relationally, all those things, you pinpoint things in your life that are, you're like, I need to change that. It's just not that easy. And I think even in my own life, when I think about things that I've wanted to change, very quickly you get into a place where you're just kind of like, you know what? That's just who I am. And we have friends like that. I'm sure you have things about your husband that you say that, well, it's just who he is. Right? And so we kind of settled into that. But when you dig deeper, this idea of change, especially when we get ourselves into tough situations, it's huge, but hard. And I think being able to understand that is really good. And so we started that conversation about change, specifically a lot of the lessons we've learned through Family Central and walking alongside people and helping them out. And so we started with a formula. You gave us a formula. I love formulas because formulas, that must mean it's easy. So remind us, what's the formula for change?
Yeah, the formula for change was the intention and the vision and the plan must be greater than the resistance. Being unhappy with our current state, together with a vision for the future and a plan, must be bigger than the resistance to change. And I know from my own life as well. Like it's been part of my life since I can remember. I was 12 years old. I remember thinking that this is too hard. I'm just not going to try. I am who I am. But I find that you can change habits, external habits, and that takes about 3 weeks. But try to change an attitude or a belief system, something that, and it has to, like something that's internal, that's so deeply ingrained in us, it seems almost impossible.
Right.
And that's why we often hear that phrase, I am who I am. Love me or, you have a choice. Accept me as I am. And yet we know that our lives aren't functioning well. We're not living in full freedom. And there's more to life. We can do better. And so we must change, and we must. And again, Jesus calls us to that transformation process, to that journey of change.
And Jesus speaks of it very hopefully, that you should be able to, and that there's life and life abundant. And so his language, a lot of it is very hopeful. Like, don't get lost where you're at. You can do this. And so that's why I think this conversation matters so much, and I really like it, because for me even, I've learned a lot listening to you, and over time as I've kind of watched you manage people, and same thing with Sean, like you learn a lot, and I find it interesting. The same thing as having kids. As you watch other people work through your struggles, it reveals a lot of your own struggles, right, and your own shortcomings. And as you're giving advice to other people, you're like, I should really take that advice.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the crazy thing about all of this is, God himself says, I have given you free will. He has implanted his DNA in us. And so we're jumping to that agency piece again.
We are.
Right?
So we just created an order.
Yeah.
and I was like, Anita, you sure you want agency at the bottom?
I smashed it.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So isn't it crazy that God gives us a free will? He says you can have say over how your life turns out.
But it's interesting. So agency, we talk about that, but at the same time, a lot of us believe that, but we also don't necessarily act very free.
No, we don't. I mean, you say that we believe that. I think we know with our mind, but we don't believe it with our heart. And so I like to use an example. Like you have property. You own a piece of property.
The bank owns it, but in theory,
yeah.
Yes, carry on.
You're the owner. And so you have say. And you have the opportunity to make choices and decisions about what goes on that property. And so agency is having say. But it comes with responsibility, right? So now I am responsible to take care of it, to maintain it, to make sure good decisions are made and it looks good and healthy and well. And I think agency in our own lives means the same thing. God has given that responsibility, that opportunity to make decisions in our own life.
So what gets us to a place where we give up that agency? Because I've had little kids and they have agency. No. They're very determined that they have agency. So why is it that we seemingly give that up as we get older in so many ways?
That's a really good question. And there's different, like training, upbringing, some of that kind of stuff. In a lot of our Mennonite families, for example, we have, if there's 7, 8 kids, there's no individuality. So you're not seen as an individual. You're seen as a pack.
Yeah.
And so there's some of that kind of training going on. And so we don't take responsibility as an individual. We don't separate ourselves as an individual. We don't have that sense of a unique sense of being that is me and stuff. But another factor I want to mention is, when hard things happen to us, terrible things happen to us. And, in childhood, growing up, a crisis, a traumatic event, a lot of us get stuck in a victim mentality where, and it's a natural thing where, our sense of well-being is shifted and our foundation is shifted. And we all of a sudden feel like we don't have control. We don't have say anymore. And the world is bad and all is bad and everybody is bad. And so we get stuck in this idea that I'm a victim and I don't have control. And so a lot of people just get stuck in that.
Yeah. And it's not that they weren't a victim. They were a victim. It was getting stuck there and not being able to move forward. Why do people get stuck there?
Often it's a number of bad things happening to them. But there are benefits to being in that place. When I'm a victim, then I don't have to take responsibility. Then I'm not the one to blame. I can blame other people, and it's not my fault if I don't make good decisions. It's not my fault. And so we don't take responsibility. And so there's benefits to being stuck in a victim mentality. Self-pity, it feels good to have people feel sorry for us.
Right.
And so our vision is limited. We feel we don't have agency. We feel we don't have choices, and we like the attention. And so there's benefits to being stuck in that.
So I wonder there's multiple different routes people get into this, but it certainly seems at least that to stay in that mindset doesn't require risk. Because when people go, well, why did your life turn out the way it did? Or why are you doing what you're doing? You don't have to own that. You can just say it's because A, B, C, D, and E. And if that wouldn't have happened, then I certainly wouldn't be like this. Yep. And so it's almost like you have no risk and you sort of almost get a bunch of the rewards because people kind of come alongside and they go, yeah, you're right. Your life has been tough. Yeah. But then at the same time, you lose out so much and it becomes a pretty dark thing pretty quick because a lot of the things that you could do and the freedoms you have. So the way I'm envisioning it, I don't know if this would line up with what the way you would see it, but so I have a bunch of friends who own their own companies and you guys are farmers, so you kind of own your own place and that. And so I see a bunch of other people that they're very jealous of that. Yep. I say, man, I would love to have that. They're so lucky. They can work when they want. They can this, they can that. What they don't see is the amount of risk it took behind the scenes and the amount of responsibility that actually stepping out like that takes. And I feel like with our lives, a lot of it's the same thing. Like I love the idea, you meet somebody and they're just free and they're carefree and they wear what they want and do what they want and they just make the choices and they're living the dream. But I don't want to step out because what if somebody doesn't like what I'm doing? And so I feel like there's a safety, a certain safety in there. And so I can understand why people would stick to that, regardless of why you're in that place, but stick to it. But then it robs you of so much else. You don't get to express who you are. You don't get to do all these things and try new things because you're so afraid of how other people are going to respond to it. So instead of taking a risk and putting yourself out there, it's just easier just to go, you know what? I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, I'm a whatever because A, B, C, D, and E. And that also excuses me from the work of trying to free myself from this, right?
Absolutely. And that step of being vulnerable putting yourself out there, that risk is hard. It's very hard to say, I'm going to try something. But, I mean, the denial piece comes in there as well, right? And is a victim mentality denial? A victim mentality is also entitlement. You know, if all of these things happen to me, then I can expect other people to, first of all, feel sorry for me, but also to give me stuff, to do things for me. I can't do things for myself, and so everybody else needs to do this for me, because if I'm sick, I can't walk, then other people need to serve me. And if I am, wounded emotionally, spiritually, then people should cater to me. So victim mentality and entitlement are the flip side of a coin. It's the same thing. The one goes with the other one.
Interesting. Now you got me thinking here a little bit, because it's fascinating. So when you're sick, our church does something that I think is pretty cool, and typically you'll get a couple weeks of meals, especially if you've had a surgery or something, and it feels really nice.
Now imagine being stuck in that place. Like, for many people, get stuck there forever.
Well, that's what I was going to say, and then you begin to go, but the reason you're bringing me meals was because I was sick.
Yeah.
But then the other thing it does is it robs you of your own ability to really feed yourself and to be able to create and have fun. And so it's interesting how. So then I see right now the lingo, and maybe it's been like this for a long time. I'm only aware of it now, but the transitioning piece. And I wonder if that's not so much because we get stuck in these places. So you get stuck in this mentality. However you got there, from the outside, you can look and go, "You're just entitled." But I think that's one of the things that we talked about with Sean, and we talked a little bit about last time, is this idea of being able to relationally come alongside someone and be able to reveal some of this. And I think that kind of brings us to the next point of this, being able to be open and honest about who you are and your shortcomings. I think one of the coolest things about Scripture that sometimes is used as a dark thing, but is the fact that he's very clear that all of us are broken. All of us have faults. All of us are sinners, whatever words you want to use there. But then now there's no hierarchy. And so now when we're having these conversations, you kind of go, okay, you got stuck in a place where you've become entitled, or you've become, you're stuck in a victim mentality, and it's robbing you of the life that you have for you. Can we come alongside? But if the person refuses to admit to it, if we get lost living a lie, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, I mean, that example, the parable that Jesus talks about, the seed, some falls on rocky ground, and some on the path, and some in fertile soil. It applies to every demographic, right? And so unless a person is willing to come out of that place, whatever we call it, denial. In AA, they call the fourth step is you must be willing to do a fearless, honest, moral inventory of your life. To look at the truth, to look at reality. Here are the things as they really are. I've been in this place for all these years, and then out of that, and that takes community. Because we have blind spots, right? Yep. When you're stuck in a place, you don't see yourself. You don't see the things that other people see. And so... you just need to get married because your spouse sees all those things. That is true if you have a spouse where you have a relationship where you can be open and honest.
Right.
One of the things, love is risky.
Yeah.
We have this idea that love feels good. It's all warm and fuzzy and cozy, and everybody feels good. But I would challenge that, because love is risky. Redemptive love means truth-telling, and not be stuck in pretending in a fantasy world. And when we don't challenge people, when they do destructive things ongoing, there's ongoing habits and patterns of doing destructive things that hurt themselves and other people, and we don't call them on it, it's not called love, it's called a lie. Right. It's called deception. It
was like when American Idol or those shows, and somebody comes on and they're like, I want to sing, and my mom has told me I'm awesome at singing, and you start hearing them and you go, your mom lied to you.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So let's talk about getting to that place. There's two elements I think we need to address. The one is your own self-awareness.
Yeah.
And the other is, how do you have these conversations? Like, how do you tell the truth to somebody without offending them so much? So let's start with self-awareness. What are some of the things that you would say? How do you get to a place where you're more self-aware of your own stuff?
Oh boy, that's a big question. That's a big question. I think just practicing, there's lots of self-awareness practices that you can do. But on a daily basis, what am I feeling? What do I want? And what do I need? That's important elements of self-awareness. But the other one is to be in a community, to have fellowship with other people, to be open to feedback and stuff. But yeah, that self-awareness piece. Who am I?
Yeah.
How do I want to live in this world? How do I want other people to experience me? How do I come across? Is so important.
And you're very limited. I like the words blind spot that you use it, because you're very limited in how much you can see yourself, because we have an incredible ability to lie to ourselves. And it's not like this is a terrible thing where but your body has ways of your mind, defense mechanisms, where if I see everything wrong with me every day and I remember everything and I stick to it, that's pretty dark pretty quick. And so.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the Johari window? If for those people that don't know, look it up, Google it.
Okay.
It's this quadrant. This is what is known to me and to other people. This is a quadrant that is known to me and not to other people. This is known to other people and not to me. And the fourth quadrant is it's not known to me or to other people, the subconscious, the deeper levels.
Interesting.
And so we all have those. And the challenge is to expand that quadrant, things that are known to me and the things that are known to other people. That's the best place.
Interesting. I wonder, okay, so I'm going to Shrek reference. He says ogres are like onions. But I wonder if that's not part of it. Like as you reveal, you take off one layer, the other one becomes more aware. Like it's this process. Because I know for me growing up, so anger was never an issue. I've never, until you became a parent and things started triggering. And all of a sudden you're like, why am I yelling? What is happening here? I didn't want to be here. But you didn't realize that. And then as that goes on, you realize different things and you work on that and you have another thing. And then Josie reveals things to me and then my kids reveal things to me. So it's almost this, yeah, I like that. Would you call it Johari window?
Yeah, it's called the Johari window.
I'm not going to lie. Just to tell you exactly where my brain always goes, I was at a fast food restaurant. I was thinking Johari window, thinking what kind of food would that be. So that's where my brain went, which is why I'm interviewing you and you're not interviewing me.
Let's expand that quadrant. What is known to me and what is known to other people. Yeah. And that's the honesty. That's integrity, right? And all of us are at different levels of that. We all have blind spots, and we are all in a certain, to a certain extent, we are in denial. But that being open to feedback, to be in trusting relationships, and to receive it from somebody else is maturity.
Right.
But then also to give it to somebody else is also maturity, because it requires trust. It requires humility. And we can't just go and tell everyone all their blind spots. We have to have a trusting relationship. We have to do it with kindness and stuff. Because the other thing is, we all know how everybody else needs to change.
Oh, 100%. And we could tell them how to do it even. We know those answers.
We spend way more time thinking about how my husband, how my children, how the church should change, and far
only
less.
Pastor Albert could do it this way.
Yes. I would be fine and I would be good if only that person would act differently or do things differently. And so there's, again, is that agency, that ownership. I can change only myself. I cannot. I am not the Holy Spirit. I can't change anyone.
Right.
And it's a waste of time criticizing and judging other people and thinking of things that they need to change and not putting the focus on me. So we must take responsibility for our internal life, for how we can change and relate to other people in kindness and gentleness and love.
Well, and some of it, and again, I think about it in so many different terms. But I'm thinking in sports, and so the kids that want to play in the big game, you have to allow someone to point out all your weaknesses to prepare you for that moment. When you think about, a doctor going through for school, you have to fail a bunch of stuff. You have to learn difficult situations and be told, well, you were narrow-minded here, or you missed this diagnosis, or you missed that. And if you can never be shown your flaws, you can never actually improve. And so when the big game shows up, whatever that looks like, the big game might be your marriage relationship where you have that one big fight that whichever way you handle this is going to define whether your marriage stays together or it moves towards falling apart. If you don't ever allow anyone to speak in your weaknesses, you're really closing a lot of doors to what your future holds. And I think that's part of the sad part. You look at people and you go, man, you could be an amazing person, but no one likes you. Yeah. You could have an incredible future, but you allow the excuses and everything about your behavior to define you. And you see it so often, especially in the youth years when you're developing and working towards a career, but in adults, it doesn't change. We don't like being told that we're doing anything wrong.
We're so defensive. We're so afraid that somebody's gonna say something that will hurt. Me, which is the false ego, right? It's the false me, right? And so we put up boundaries. We defend ourselves. We protect that image of who we think we are, and we miss an opportunity of being deeply loved, of being centered in real love, right? And a real sense of who we are.
I know for us, one of the things we've done with staffing and stuff as we're searching, the idea of being teachable and being humble have become two of the biggest things that we're looking for, period. Because they really speak to whether or not you're going to be the kind of person I want to work with. If you're not teachable, there's a good chance that you're also not going to have much to teach me. Because you can only expand so much unless you're willing to learn. And that humility piece really puts you in a place. And so I think that kind of leads us to the final part that we want to cover here is being reactive versus proactive. And so much of our life is spent in the reactive element where something happens and we try to react and then something else happens.
It's again that fatalism, right? It's literally where we again don't recognize that we have choices, that we have agency, that we have say, and we allow life to happen to us without ever planning a response or being actively engaged in the outcome of our life, right? And so reactive is again that victim mentality. Proactive means that I am taking responsibility. I do recognize that I have choices and decisions, and the decisions and the choices that I make, I must take responsibility for, but they lead to big outcomes. So when we talk about choices, when we talk about the decisions, the most important decisions that we make are in the moment. Today, from one moment to the next, it's the small decisions that we make that lead to big outcomes. And we must take responsibility for those small decisions and those small choices. When we talk about, being reactive, so many people are stuck in a cycle, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different outcome, expecting different results. Yeah. And we know that saying,
it's insanity.
It's the definition of insanity.
Yeah, not sanity.
Not sanity. But if you never change nothing, if you don't ever change anything, nothing will change. Yeah. And so you can imagine 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you will be in that maybe not in that same exact spot because your worst habits will take over in bigger and bigger ways. Yeah. And so Yeah, if you don't change anything, things will still change, but they will deteriorate, or they can improve one day at a time, and all of a sudden you have a big outcome.
So bringing it back full circle, because we are basically out of time, we'll go back to the very first element that you talk about with change. And I think that's that idea of having a vision and being able to say, I'm not happy with where I am now. And I think one of the things that our culture I think we're trying in some ways. I mean, we just had International Women's Day. We've been trying to do stuff on race. And people are trying in all different ways. And I don't know how to run the whole country, but I know in my own self is visioning towards a time when people have these kind of real meaningful conversations. It blows me away when we interact with people who say, I don't have anyone who I talk to honestly about my life. I don't have anyone that I can go to and say, this is what I'm really struggling with. And I think it's so sad because I have friends, and you hear about people and you think the marriage is perfect, and then all of a sudden the whole thing's blown apart, and you go, what happened? Well, they had no one to talk to, and you're in the midst of this struggle, and then all of a sudden the big explosion comes. And so much of life is like that. You don't always have the big, huge moments, but you're building towards something. And in our hope, at least with people who come in from FCA and kind of what we're doing in our community, is that to expand people's vision. That yes, maybe right now life is rough with you and your wife, but could we get to a place where we work towards that relationship being restored? Where we work towards you rebuilding a career, or rebuilding your mental health, or rebuilding your physical health, or whatever that is. And so if we can get that vision out there, and I think that's one of the things that, I love about Jesus, is that you read him and you feel inspired.
Yeah.
It's not a thou shalt. He's just like, I created you for so much more. I want you to experience love and life and laughter and hope and peace. You should be able to have that. But then he gives us the freedom to make choices.
I mean, if you know C.S. Lewis, he compared it to, we play in this tiny little mud puddle and we don't see the ocean that's right beside it, where we can be
Okay, it's a funny story. Can I tell you a funny story about that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we went for a bachelor party out in Manitoba with my brother years ago, and we were up north, and my sister sent us to this like fancy golf resort thing. And so we wanted to go swimming after golfing, and so the lake sucked around there, but whatever, we went and went back to our hotel room, and we were even thinking, wouldn't it be nice if this place had a water park? So in our rush to think about golfing, we had missed the fact that there was a huge water park there, and we just hadn't seen it. And so when you were saying that, I was like, exactly.
Yeah,
like we're sitting there in this water, and it's miserable, and we have this entire water park we're missing out on, right?
Yeah, and that's what the Nile is like. That's what it literally, that describes it so well. So let's stop sitting in that mud puddle and recognize, you mentioned we don't have anyone to talk to. Really? Like, do you really not have anyone to talk to, or did you just not choose to reach out? Right? We always have choices. We are never a complete victim. Terrible things happen to us, and we don't have control over those. But in those terrible things, we have choices. How do we respond? What do I do next? What do I make out of this? And so we always have an opportunity to make a decision, to make a choice that will lead us to the next place.
Awesome. Okay, we're out of time. Thanks for your time. If you've been watching and listening and you want to know more, you can reach out to Sean or Anita. All their contact stuff's on the website. With that, thanks again. Thanks for listening.
It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.